Chapters 1. The Surprise Visit. Oliver Wilder woke earlier than usual, long before his alarm buzzed its gentle reminder. He lay there for a moment, the soft morning light spilling across the sheets, stretching slowly like it had all the time in the world. Today mattered. Today wasn't just another workday, not just another Tuesday with emails, invoices, and casual hellos exchanged in the neighborhood grocery store. Today was their anniversary. He rolled toward the warm, familiar shape beside him. Clara slept peacefully, her dark hair fanned across her pillow like a soft curtain. She breathed quietly, almost rhythmically, her face relaxed in a way Oliver rarely saw anymore. Running a major media company didn't leave much room for rest, and even in her sleep, she usually twitched or murmured through the lingering stress of the day before. But this morning, she looked still, calm, almost angelic. Oliver smiled softly to himself. Perfect. Don't wake her. Instead, he slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb her, threw on a t-shirt and jeans, and tiptoed toward the door. He had a plan. A simple one. A sweet one. A movie husband-level plan. He was going to show up at Brightline Media with her favorite pastries, the almond croissants from Pierre's on Broad Street, and surprise her before she dove into the whirlwind of meetings and ruthless editorial calendars. It wasn't extravagant, but it was thoughtful. It was him, and Clara always appreciated little gestures more than loud ones. At least, she used to. He tried not to dwell on that last thought as he drove across town, the morning city traffic chugging sluggishly. He hummed to an upbeat song on the radio, tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, and glanced at the white pastry box like it held something delicate and sacred. It's just a surprise, he reminded himself aloud. People do surprises all the time. Couples do surprises. Husbands show up to see their wives at work. It's normal. Still, an uneasy flutter prickled at the back of his mind. Lately, Clara felt more distant. Not cold, not unloving, just preoccupied, lost in her world of deadlines, investors, corporate strategies, and the editorial empire she was building. He wasn't jealous of her career. He was proud as hell of it. But somewhere in the last few months, Oliver started feeling like he lived just outside the edges of her life, like a footnote in the margins. That's why today mattered. He parked, grabbed the pastry box, straightened his shirt, and walked toward the sleek glass front entrance of Brightline Media. The building stood tall and modern, all sharp angles and ambition. Inside, people hustled across the lobby like bees in a buzzing hive. Oliver approached the security checkpoint with a friendly smile. The security guard, a bulky man with a buzz cut and a clipboard, held up a hand before Oliver even said a word. No entry for unauthorized persons, he said with a firm tone, not rude but definitely not welcoming. Oh, no worries, I'm not a random visitor. Oliver lifted the pastry box like it was a peace offering. I'm here to surprise my wife, Clara Wilder, the CEO. The guard blinked at him, slowly. Then something in his face shifted from neutral to confused. Your wife? Yes, Oliver replied, still smiling. Clara Wilder. My wife. The guard's confusion evaporated instantly, replaced with something dangerously close to amusement. His lips twitched. He tried to hold it back. Oh, he said, you're the CEO's husband? Yes, Oliver repeated, chuckling lightly, because he assumed the guard might have misheard. That's me. Husband. Married. We have the certificate and everything. The guard didn't look convinced. In fact, he looked like he was fighting the urge to laugh outright. Sir, the guard finally said, lowering his voice like he was about to break unfortunate news, I see the CEO's husband every day. That sentence hit Oliver wrong. His smile slipped, just slightly, enough to notice. I'm sorry, Oliver asked, blinking. You see who? The guard jabbed his thumb casually toward the elevator lobby. Him, the CEO's husband. Right there. Oliver turned, and his world tilted a few degrees. Julian Reed, tall, polished, impeccably dressed Julian Reed, strode out of the elevator beside Clara. Julian carried Clara's briefcase like he'd been doing it for years. He handed her a coffee. She thanked him with a tired smile, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear as she walked with him. They moved in sync, their steps naturally aligned. Julian said something that made Clara laugh under her breath. her shoulders relaxing as though his presence relieved some invisible weight. The guard pointed again. See? That's the CEO's husband. Oliver stared. He felt the pastry box grow heavier in his hands. It wobbled slightly as his fingers lost strength. Clara didn't see him. She didn't look around. She just kept walking with Julian toward the front doors, discussing something serious, then laughing again. Oliver's heart thudded. He's not. He's not her husband, Oliver managed. His voice came out thin, almost breakable. He's her so... The guard shrugged. Looks like a husband to me. Comes with her every morning. Leaves with her every evening. Carries her stuff. Has access to her office. They act like a married couple. The guy even signs the visitor logs sometimes. Something cold crept up Oliver's spine, settling behind his ribs like a block of ice. Clara and Julian stopped near the exit as someone approached them, another employee, asking a question. Julian touched Clara's elbow lightly as he pointed towards something on a tablet. Clara nodded, leaning in. It was a simple gesture. Innocent, maybe. Professional, maybe. But watching it felt like standing barefoot on broken glass. The guard chuckled, tapping his clipboard. Sir, if you're trying a prank or something, it's okay. Happens sometimes. But that guy, he pointed one more time. That's the one we all know as her husband. Oliver's throat tightened. He suddenly felt like the whole building, all those polished windows and buzzing employees, was staring at him, judging him, laughing at him. He stepped back, then another step. The pastry box trembled. Right, Oliver whispered. Okay, yeah, I must have gotten things wrong. He didn't know what he was saying. His brain buzzed loudly, drowning out logic. He turned away from the security desk and walked out the front doors into the cool morning air. But even outside, even with distance between him and the building, his mind replayed the scene again and again, Clara and Julian walking side by side, like a couple with years of routine behind them. Oliver clutched the pastry box to his chest, swallowing hard. Something was wrong, very wrong, and he felt it in every corner of his shaking, insecure heart. He walked away from the building, unsure where he was going. He just knew one thing for certain. Something was happening behind his back, and he had no idea what it was. Chapters 2, The Spiral of Doubt. Oliver didn't remember walking down the steps of Brightline Media. His feet moved on their own, his breath tight and shallow, every inhale scraping at his ribs. He clutched the pastry box like it was the only thing holding him upright. He should have gone home. He should have called Clara. He should have confronted the security guard politely and cleared the misunderstanding. But instead, when he heard the glass doors hiss open behind him, instinct yanked him behind one of the large concrete columns near the entrance. He had like some guilty teenager caught sneaking out past curfew. Are you serious? He whispered to himself. What are you doing? You're a grown man, a reasonable human. You don't hide behind. Before he could finish scolding himself, Clara's voice floated into the air like a gentle melody. Thanks, Julian. I really needed that coffee. Oliver slowly peeked around the corner. There she was, Clara, perfectly composed in her navy blazer and white blouse, her hair tied up in a professional knot. And beside her stood Julian Reed, loosened tie, tailored charcoal suit, a man who looked like he'd been carved from the idea of confidence itself. Julian laughed softly. You look like you needed 10 of them. Clara nudged him with her elbow. That is not funny, Jules. Jules. She called him Jules. Oliver blinked hard, trying to steady the sudden quake in his chest. Clara hit the elevator button earlier, Oliver thought. Julian carried her bag. They walked like a couple. But hearing that nickname, casual, intimate, practiced, made something inside him unravel a little more. Come on, we'll be late for the briefing with the board, Julian said. We're always early, Clara replied. That's because I drag you here at ungodly hours, Julian joked. Ungodly, Clara agreed with a small, tired laugh. They walked together toward the underground parking garage entrance, talking like they shared the same morning, the same routine, the same life. Oliver followed them. He told himself he wasn't really following them. He was simply going in the same direction. Coincidentally, casually, totally innocent. He even tried to whistle nonchalantly, but his lips were too dry to make a sound. He walked several paces behind, ducking behind another pillar when they took the ramp down to the lower level lot. His heart hammered in his ears. Just talk to her, a sane voice whispered in his head. Ask her who the hell Jules is. Ask her why the guard thought she had another husband. But another voice, louder, sharper, panic drowned it out. What if she lies? What if she's already been lying? What if this is the truth you weren't meant to see? The garage air was cool and smelled faintly of oil and concrete. The soft echo of their footsteps bounced between the rows of parked cars. Oliver crouched behind a silver SUV, his breath fogging slightly. Julian unlocked a black BMW with a soft chirp. Of course he drives a BMW, Oliver thought bitterly. Perfect. Clara walked around to the passenger side. Julian opened the door for her. Opened it like a gentleman from a romance novel, then closed it gently once she settled inside. Oliver felt something twist in his gut. Julian jogged lightly around the front of the car and slipped into the driver's seat. The windshield reflected the ceiling lights, but at just the right angle, Oliver could see their silhouettes, Clara rubbing her temples, Julian speaking in low tones, Clara smiling faintly. The engine revved to life. The BMW rolled back, then smoothly pulled out of the space. Oliver pressed himself closer to the SUV, heart thundering, as if hiding badly could somehow protect him from reality. He watched the car creep toward the exit ramp. He should go home. He should stop this. This was insane. But his legs locked in place, refusing to obey. His eyes glued themselves to the black vehicle until it disappeared completely. Then the spiral began. First, a trickle of thoughts. Then a flood. Then a tidal wave. She didn't tell me she carpooled with him. She never mentioned he drove her anywhere. Why was he carrying her bag? Why does she laugh like that with him? Why did she call him Jules? His breathing sped up. The garage felt smaller by the second. He imagined them in the car, Julian's hand brushing hers on the console, Clara leaning her head back with a comfortable sigh, maybe glancing at him with that gentle smile she used to give only Oliver. Was she telling Julian about their morning? About Oliver trying to bring pastries? Was she laughing about it? His mind painted images, uninvited, cruel. He pictured Julian showing up early to pick her up, Clara slipping into his car with coffee already waiting for her, the guard waving them through like they were the royal couple of Bright Line Media, Clara thanking Julian, brushing his arm, maybe sharing private complaints, jokes, details Oliver never heard anymore. No, Oliver whispered harshly. Stop it. Stop thinking like this. He straightened, gripping the pastry box until the cardboard bent. But his thoughts didn't stop. Instead, they grew louder. He remembered every moment from the last few months. Clara coming home late. Clara canceling dinners. Clara saying, "It's just work, honey." Clara smiling at texts she never showed him. He remembered her perfume lingering late into the night. He remembered her exhaustion masking something else. He remembered her excuses. He remembered the distance. And his brain connected dots that weren't actually dots at all, but emotion didn't care. What if something's going on? He muttered. What if she's cheating? What if Jules is? He couldn't bring himself to say the words. He exited the garage slowly, head spinning. Every step felt clumsy, like he was learning to walk all over again. When he stepped out into the daylight, the brightness stabbed his eyes. His imagination ran wild, unrestrained. He pictured Julian leaning over Clara's shoulder in boardrooms, whispering ideas in her ear. He pictured coffee breaks that lasted too long. He pictured private jokes, shared glances, quiet laughs, whispered conversations. He pictured flirtations that looked innocent to everyone but him. And worse, he pictured the ease between them. The kind of ease that comes from time. Familiarity. Closeness. How long has this been happening? He whispered to himself. How long have I been blind? He stood there on the sidewalk, hugging the untouched pastries, while every suspicion he'd buried deep over the months clawed its way back to the surface. Clara's smiles. Clara's late nights. Clara's tired excuses. Clara calling Julian Jules. Instead of marching back inside and demanding the truth, Oliver's fear softened his spine. Instead of stepping into confrontation, he stepped deeper into doubt. Instead of talking to Clara, he sank deeper into analyzing every tiny detail, every gesture he'd just witnessed, every smile, every shared step. Oliver turned and walked aimlessly down the street, his mind spiraling faster and faster. He didn't know what was real anymore. He didn't know what was innocent and what wasn't. All he knew was what he'd seen. Clara and Julian. Together. Comfortable. Close. Too close. And he couldn't shake the terrible thought settling heavily in his chest. Something is happening, and I might be the last person to know. Chapters 3, The Wannabe Spy. Oliver walked several blocks with no plan, no direction, and no clarity. Just a loop of spinning, toxic thoughts replaying Clara and Julian's every movement. Each step felt heavy, each breath choppy. The pastry box hung from his fingertips, now crushed at the corners from how tightly he'd been gripping it. He stopped at a crosswalk, staring blankly at the blinking red hand. "You're overreacting," one voice in his head whispered. "But what if you're not?" Another screamed. Cars rushed past him. His heartbeat thudded louder. Then he saw it. A sleek black BMW turning onto the boulevard, a familiar one. Julian's. Without thinking, Oliver lunged forward. "Itchy why," a cyclist shouted as Oliver nearly stepped into their path. "Sorry," Oliver yelled, already jogging toward the street. He couldn't lose them. Not now. Not when every instinct in his body screamed that something was off. Clara and Julian's car pushed through traffic, heading toward the busier district of downtown. Oliver's eyes darted wildly, searching for a taxi. And like a miracle or a cosmic joke, a beat-up silver Camry turned the corner and stopped at a light, windows down, music blasting some philosophical spoken-word track in what sounded like Russian. Oliver sprinted toward it, waving like a madman. Hey, are you an Uber? Taxi? Anything." The driver, a bearded man with a ponytail, looked over slowly and squinted like he was assessing Oliver's soul. "I am Dmitri," he said in a thick accent. "I am many things. Today, I am Uber. Tomorrow? Who knows? Perhaps poet. Perhaps goat farmer. I don't care. Can I get a ride?" Oliver gasped, pointing frantically. "Just follow that BMW. Please." Dmitri raised an eyebrow. Classic line. Hollywood. Chase scene. Very suspicious. "Please." Dmitri sighed dramatically. "Fine. Get in. But no gunfights. I just cleaned the upholstery." Oliver scrambled into the back seat, nearly squishing the pastries in the process. The moment the door shut, Dmitri pressed on the gas and pursued the BMW with the seriousness of a man who'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. "So," Dmitri said casually, "who are we following? Debt collector? Ex-wife? Crime boss? My wife?" Oliver blurted. Divorce. No. Reconciliation? No." Dmitri smirked in the rearview mirror. Infidelity." Oliver froze. Dmitri's smile widened. "Say nothing. I have 6th sense for drama. And 7th sense for marital foolishness." I'm not," Oliver stammered. "I just need to know where they're going." "Them," Dmitri repeated. "So she's not alone. Interesting." Oliver muttered a curse under his breath and slumped back. The BMW continued through traffic, steady and purposeful. Oliver's stomach knotted tighter each time the car turned. Dmitri followed calmly, humming a melancholic tune under his breath. "You know," Dmitri said, "if she cheats, it is usually because communication broke down." "Thanks," Oliver muttered. "That's very comforting." "I am here to help," Dmitri said proudly. Oliver peered forward, gripping the seat like he was clinging to the edge of a cliff. After 10 tense minutes, the BMW turned into a parking lot beneath a restaurant, La Vino Verde, an upscale, romantically lit Italian spot known for first dates and wedding proposals. Oliver's stomach plummeted. "They chose that restaurant," he whispered. Dmitri said knowingly, cheating for sure. "Stop saying that." Dmitri lifted a hand placatingly. Fine. Maybe it is business meeting. Very candlelit business meeting." Oliver's pulse throbbed in his ears as he watched Julian step out of the car first and walk around to Clara's side. He opened her door, again, and offered a hand. Clara took it as she got out. She didn't look uncomfortable. She looked familiar with him. Too familiar. Oliver muttered, "Can you pull into a spot, but not obviously close?" Dmitri nodded and pulled to the far end of the lot. "Okay, but if police come, I was never here." Police aren't going to, you know what, never mind. Oliver grabbed the damaged pastry box and stepped out, ducking behind a large potted plant as Clara and Julian headed inside. Dmitri rolled down the window. Do you require surveillance assistance? I can pretend to read newspaper. No, just stay here. Dmitri winked. I am Shadow. I am Ghost. Oliver ignored him and hurried toward the restaurant, his heart pounding like a drum line in his chest. He crept along the stone wall, pretending to check his phone whenever someone glanced at him. Through the window, he spotted them. Clara and Julian sat at a small, round table near the corner, candlelit, intimate, perfectly staged to trigger every jealous nerve in Oliver's body. A waiter poured wine into their glasses. They clinked lightly. No, Oliver whispered hoarsely. No. He crouched and pulled out his phone, turning the camera on. I'm not crazy, he muttered. I just need evidence. Proof. Something to explain all this. He zoomed in and hit record. Clara was laughing, really laughing. That laugh that reached her eyes, the one she rarely used at home anymore. Julian leaned in slightly, speaking with that smooth confidence he seemed born with. He gestured animatedly with his hands while Clara listened intently, resting her chin softly on her palm. Oliver's heart cracked, just a bit, enough to let the worst thoughts rush in. Then Julian touched her hand, just a light touch, brief, maybe innocent. But to Oliver, it felt like a betrayal he was witnessing in HD. He zoomed further, breath shaking. Inside, Julian took a sip of wine and said something that made Clara place her hand gently over her mouth to laugh harder. She leaned closer. Their heads nearly touched. Oliver felt nauseous. His mind raced through every worst-case scenario, spinning stories faster than he could breathe. She's comfortable with him. She's happy with him. She looks at him like she used to look at me. He swallowed hard as his throat burned. His imagination filled the rest. Late-night meetings that ran long. Team dinners that couldn't be missed. Texts in the middle of the night from work emergencies. Clara coming home tired, not just from work, but from him. He shifted closer to the window, desperate for more angles, more proof, more pain to torture himself with. Julian leaned forward, brushing Clara's shoulder as he pointed something out on his phone. Clara didn't move away. If anything, she moved closer. Oliver inhaled sharply. Oh God, he whispered. It's happening. It's actually happening. He felt his world tilting, slowly collapsing around him. He recorded every moment, every glance, every smile, convincing himself with each second of footage that he was witnessing the confirmation of his worst fear. Paranoia fully consumed him, hollowing his stomach until nothing but fear and certainty remained. He lowered the phone, eyes glued to the couple inside. They're having an affair, he whispered to himself. And for the first time that day, he believed it completely. Chapters 4, Deep Dive into Madness. Oliver barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Clara and Julian sitting in that glowing Italian restaurant, heads tilted close, wine glasses catching the candlelight. Even in his dreams, Julian reached across the table, brushed Clara's hand, smiled at her with that confident, effortless charm. By 4:17 a.m., Oliver was sitting at his dining table, hunched over his laptop like a conspiracy theorist on the verge of unraveling the universe. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, and 3 empty coffee mugs lined up beside him like fallen soldiers. Okay, Jules, he muttered as he typed Julian Reed's full name into the search bar. Let's see who you really are. Julian's LinkedIn appeared first. The man looked professionally intimidating even in a profile picture. Sharp jaw, sharper suit, smiling like the world belonged to him. Chief Operating Officer, Brightline Media. Former COO at North Point Studios. MBA from Stanford. Award-winning strategist and organizational leader. Wow, Oliver whispered. So this is the guy she spends 12 hours a day with. He clicked through Julian's posts, each one more polished than the last. Julian at a charity gala. Julian speaking on a leadership panel. Julian shaking hands with industry giants. Julian posing with team members, Clara always close by, smiling in half the photos. What the hell? Oliver breathed, clicking one image and zooming in. Why is he standing so close to her in every picture? He switched over to Instagram. Julian's account was public. I knew it, Oliver hissed. This man wants attention. The feed was a perfectly curated mix of morning gym selfies, boardroom shots, motivational quotes written in pretentious fonts, and stylish brunch photos. And Clara appeared in several posts, always framed with warmth and admiration. Couldn't do it without this powerhouse by my side. The best CEO any company could ask for. Late nights with the best team. Oliver's stomach twisted. Late nights. With Clara. Of course. He scrolled angrily, his thumb moving so fast he nearly dropped his phone. Okay, he muttered. I need to get closer. I need more. Before he could think better of it, he opened a new tab and began creating a burner account. Name: Jonathan Miles. Profile picture: a random stock image of a guy holding a dog. Bio: marketing professional. Coffee lover. Dog dad. Perfect, Oliver said, nodding approvingly. Totally normal. Totally harmless. He used a burner to follow Julian quietly. Then another burner account. Then a backup burner for the burner, just in case Julian was smart enough to detect suspicious behavior. What am I doing? Oliver whispered as he created his fourth fake identity. This is insane. I'm insane. But he didn't stop. Not even close. He typed in Brightline Media employees and spiraled deeper. Rebecca Hawthorne, Clara's assistant. He clicked her LinkedIn profile. He muttered at the screen, you know things. Rebecca's profile photo was cheerful and professional. Big smile, neat bun, blazer slightly too large for her petite frame. She shared motivational quotes and photos of her dog. She looked harmless. Too harmless. Suspiciously harmless. Oliver clicked her activity feed. She liked every one of Julian's posts. Oh, she's definitely in on it, Oliver decided. He clicked her Instagram. Private. Of course it's private, Oliver whispered. What are you hiding, Rebecca? He sent a follow request from the burner account, then from another burner, then from yet another. Someone's going to think I'm a bot, he mumbled, but whatever. I need to know. By sunrise, Oliver had scrolled through the digital footprint of half the company. He had a list. Clara, Julian, Rebecca marketing team, design team, even the HR director. He told himself this was research. It was reconnaissance. It was information gathering. It was about saving his marriage, right? By 9 a.m., Oliver stood in front of Brightline Media again, this time wearing a button-down shirt, glasses he hadn't worn in 3 years, a messenger bag, and an ID badge he printed at home that said, Career Expo Marketing Student, University of Millstone. The saddest part? He wasn't even a student. He took a deep breath, pulled his shoulders back, and walked through the doors like he had a purpose in life. The same security guard from earlier glanced at him, squinted, and then shrugged, apparently convinced this nerdy version of Oliver was someone entirely different. Oliver exhaled in relief. Inside the building, several tables were set up with career day banners, pamphlets, and merchandise. College-aged attendees wandered around the lobby with notebooks and resumes. Perfect camouflage. He grabbed a branded pen and notepad from a nearby booth and blended in. His eyes scanned the area for Clara. It didn't take long. There she was, walking toward the elevators with Julian at her side, chatting about something on a tablet. Julian gestured confidently, Clara nodding with the professional attentiveness she rarely used around Oliver anymore. A sharp pang shot through Oliver. He ducked behind a tall cardboard display for a marketing internship. Just in time, Clara and Julian passed right by him. I'm telling you, if we adjust the rollout plan by Wednesday, the board will love it, Julian said. Wednesday? Clara asked, eyebrows raised. That fast? I can handle the heavy lifting, Julian replied smoothly. You just need to approve. Clara smiled, brushing a stray hair out of her face. You've already done more than enough. Julian reached out, lightly, gently, and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. Clara froze for half a second. Then she laughed it off. But Oliver saw it all. He felt it like a stab. His grip tightened on the notepad so hard it almost snapped in half. He wanted to rush up, yell, demand answers, throw the pastries at Julian's face, but fear held him like a chain around the throat. So he watched instead, like a shadow, like someone who didn't belong to her world anymore. Julian walked beside Clara, carrying her briefcase as they stepped into the elevator. "Let's knock this meeting out and grab lunch after," Julian said. Clara nodded. "Yeah, okay." The elevator doors slid shut. Oliver stood there, chest heaving, heart cracking open. Every detail he saw, every gesture, every touch, every shared look, only deepened his confusion, sharpened his suspicion, and tightened the fear curling inside him like a poison vine. He couldn't make sense of any of it. He only knew one thing. The more he watched, the more he obsessed, the more convinced he became that something was happening between them, and he was utterly powerless to stop it. Chapters 5, The Confrontation Trap. Oliver had never broken a rule in his entire life. Not in high school, not in college, not even at work, where the wildest thing he'd ever done was take 2 pins instead of 1 from the supply closet. Yet here he was, inside his wife's corporate headquarters, disguised as a fake career fair attendee, sneaking past the employee's only sign like a man possessed. His heart pounded in his throat, loud enough that he was sure anyone passing by could hear it. Each footstep felt like a felony. His palms were sweating so badly that the fake ID badge he'd printed at home was peeling off the corner. "What am I doing?" he thought. But the deeper fear, the one that kept feeding his adrenaline, whispered back, finding out the truth. He passed through a hallway lined with framed awards and glossy studio posters, ducking every time he heard footsteps. Twice he had to pretend to be deeply interested in the office floor map on the wall. Once he hid behind a ficus plant so large it looked like a miniature rainforest. Finally, he reached the glass-windowed corridor that led to the executive offices. Claire's office. He peeked through the glass walls of each room. Empty. Empty. Meeting in progress. Empty. He moved on. His legs carried him faster than his brain could argue. Somewhere between desperation and panic, he reached her door. He pushed it gently. Unlocked. A quiet click. He slipped inside and shut the door behind him. Clara's office was immaculate. Sleek white desk. Minimalist decor. Soft yellow lighting. Framed certificates. A few personal photos. One of her at a conference, one with her brother, and one of her and Oliver at the beach, their smiles bright and unguarded. That photo felt like a punch in the memory. He tore his eyes away. "Okay," he whispered to himself. "You're here. Just look for something. Anything." He moved toward her desk, opening drawers slowly, trying not to make noise. Pens, sticky notes, meeting agendas, expense receipts, marketing proposals, employee schedules. Nothing incriminating. He opened another drawer. More files. Julian's name appeared on several. Project Merge Strategy, prepared by Julian Reed. Operations Alignment Review, JR, CEO COO Coordination Notes. His heartbeat jumped. He flipped through the papers, scanning every detail like the answer to his fears might be hiding between bullet points. He didn't notice the footsteps approaching. He didn't hear the faint echo of heels in the hallway. He didn't even sense the door opening. Not until a voice, calm, familiar, and absolutely confused, spoke behind him. "Oliver." He froze. His entire body locked up like someone had poured cement down his spine. Slowly, painfully, he turned around. Clara stood in the doorway, eyebrows raised, purse still hanging from her shoulder, eyes darting from him to the half-open drawers to the scattered papers on her desk. "What," she said, blinking slowly, "are you doing in my office?" Oliver's throat went dry. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Clara stepped inside, letting the door close behind her. "Oliver, answer me. What is going on?" He swallowed hard. I can explain," he croaked, even though he absolutely could not. Clara looked around in disbelief. "Why are my files open? Why is my desk? Did you come in here to search through my things?" Her voice wasn't angry yet, just bewildered. Oliver wished she would get angry. That would be easier to deal with. Instead, the silent disappointment in her eyes made his stomach twist into knots. He inhaled shakily, and the truth, the entire messy, humiliating truth, crashed out of him like a dam breaking. "I followed you," he blurted. Clara's expression went completely still. "What?" "I followed you," he repeated, words tumbling in frantic waves. "Yesterday and today. I followed you and Julian to the restaurant. I got into a stranger's Uber. His name was Dimitri. He talked about the universe, I don't know, and I tracked you there. Clara blinked. Twice. You did what? I filmed you too. Oliver confessed, voice cracking. At dinner, I took videos from behind the plant outside the window, and I watched everything. Everything. A long silence. Clara stared at him as if she didn't recognize the man in front of her. He continued anyway, the confession pouring out uncontrollably. And I made burner accounts. 4 of them. Maybe 5. I followed Julian on Instagram. And Rebecca. And half the marketing team. I searched your entire company on LinkedIn. I looked up Julian's MBA and his old jobs, and he ran a shaky hand through his hair. And then I came here today, dressed like a college student, pretended I was part of your career fair, and I snuck past security and wandered through the building to get to your office. And I looked through your files because I thought, his voice collapsed. He looked down at the floor, shoulders trembling. I thought you were cheating on me. Clara was silent. He didn't dare look up. The room felt cold, too quiet. The air faintly smelled of coffee and printer ink, but all Oliver could smell was dread. His voice broke when he tried to speak again. Clara, I know how insane it sounds. I know, but I saw you two together, and I thought, his breath hitched. I thought I was losing you. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Oliver finally lifted his head, bracing himself for anger, betrayal, hurt, rage, disgust. But Clara's expression was nothing like that. Her lips quivered. Her cheeks tightened. Her eyes widened slightly. Then she inhaled a sharp, unsteady breath, and she burst into uncontrollable laughter. Chapter 6. The Truth That Ends a Chaos. Clara laughed so hard she had to brace herself against her desk, one hand gripping the edge as tears formed in her eyes. It wasn't a polite laugh. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was full-body hysterics, the kind Oliver had only heard once before when he accidentally microwaved an entire pack of tinfoil-wrapped muffins and set off the fire alarm. But this time he wasn't laughing. Clara, he whispered, voice small, this isn't funny. She tried to speak, but another wave of laughter hit, bending her over slightly. Oh my God, she gasped between breaths. You followed us, you infiltrated my office. Oliver, you created burner accounts. I didn't mean for it to come out like that, he muttered weakly. Clara finally managed to calm herself enough to stand upright, wiping under her eyes. Okay, hold on. She inhaled deeply. Then another burst of laughter escaped. I'm going to die, she wheezed. This is the best thing I've ever heard. Oliver, miserable, sank into the nearest chair like a deflated balloon. I genuinely thought you were having an affair. Clara finally stopped laughing. Her expression softened for the first time since she entered the room. She walked toward him slowly, then sat on the chair opposite him. Oliver, she said gently, I need you to listen to me very carefully. He lifted his eyes toward her, afraid of what was coming next. Clara placed a hand on his knee, a gesture so familiar, so steady, that for the first time since this madness began, Oliver felt himself breathe. Julian is not my husband, she said. The words hit him like cold water. What? Oliver blinked rapidly. But the security guard, oh my God, Clara said, rubbing her forehead. The security guard is new. He started last month. He sees Julian with me all day. He sees him carry my things. He sees him walk me in every morning. He probably assumed he was my husband without thinking. But he smiled and said he sees him every day, Oliver argued, replaying the humiliation in his mind. Yes, Clara groaned, because Julian is here every day. He's the COO, Oliver, Chief Operating Officer. He basically lives in this building. Oliver stared blankly. But he opened your car door, because I had a box of prototypes in my arms. He touched your shoulder. I had a migraine, and he was reminding me to take medicine. He ordered dinner for you. That's because I was on 3 calls at once, and he knows I forget to eat. He smiled at you. Clara tilted her head. Oliver, people at work smile at each other. That's normal. Oliver opened his mouth, then closed it again. Finally, Clara gave him the final blow with a soft, amused sigh. Oliver, Julian is very, very gay. Oliver blinked. Once. Twice. Gay. Gay, Clara said, nodding. Like aggressively. Out since college. First in line at Pride Gay. Oliver's brain tried to reboot. But yes, she said, standing up and walking toward the door. And since you clearly need visual reassurance, let me get him. No, don't. But it was too late. She opened the door and leaned out. Julian, can you come here for a second? Oliver wanted to crawl into the nearest vent and live there permanently. Moments later, Julian Reed himself appeared. Tall, stylish, annoyingly well-groomed. He stepped inside with a calm, polite expression, the complete opposite of the emotional disaster slumped in the chair beside him. Yes, Em, he asked. Then he noticed Oliver. Oh, he said with a warm smile. You must be Oliver. Finally. I've heard so much about you. Oliver squeaked. Literally squeaked. You have. Of course, Julian said, leaning casually against Clara's desk. Clara talks about you all the time, usually while rolling her eyes lovingly. Clara elbowed Julian lightly. Focus. Julian raised an eyebrow. Right. She tells me you had concerns. Oliver wanted to die. Julian clasped his manicured hands together. So, let me clear things up. Then he took out his phone, scrolling for a moment before turning the screen toward Oliver. The wallpaper was a picture of Julian kissing a muscular man with gentle brown eyes and a dimpled smile. This, Julian said with a flourish, is Damien, my actual husband. We met at a pottery class where I dropped a vase on his shoe. Love at first ceramic disaster. Clara snorted. Julian continued cheerfully, swiping through photos, him and Damien traveling, cooking, wearing matching Halloween costumes. Oliver stared, speechless. Julian paused at a picture of Damien in an apron that said kiss the chef. Isn't he handsome? I mean, I try, but he's the real beauty of the relationship. Oliver just nodded silently, feeling like he had floated out of his body. Julian gave Oliver's shoulder a friendly pat. Sweetheart, if Clara were into handsome, structured, type A men, she would have married me. But she didn't. Clara crossed her arms. Obviously. Julian winked at her. Obviously. Then he stood upright. All right, I'll leave you two to whatever this is. He walked toward the door, then paused with a teasing grin. Oh, and Oliver, you might want to check the video quality on your spying footage. The angle was terrible. Oliver choked. Clara burst into fresh laughter. Julian beamed proudly and exited. When the door closed, Oliver covered his face with both hands. I can't believe this. I made a complete idiot of myself. Clara walked over and wrapped her arms around his shoulders from behind, resting her cheek on his hair. No, she murmured. You made a scared idiot of yourself. And that's different. He lowered his hands. I don't deserve you. Clara moved around to kneel in front of him, taking his face between her palms. Oliver Wilder, she said softly. I don't want perfect. I don't want polished. I don't want the kind of man who carries briefcases and says things like circle back. He huffed a tiny laugh. I want you, she said. You, with your stupid pastries and your overthinking and your terrible disguises. You, who loves me so deeply you panic at the idea of losing me. You, whose heart is messy and warm and real. Oliver's chest tightened. Clara smiled gently. If I wanted a robotic, perfectly confident executive, I would have married Julian. Oliver swallowed. So we're okay? Clara nodded, squeezing his hands. We're more than okay. And now that everything is cleared up, please, for the love of God, stop stalking my coworkers. He managed a weak laugh. I'll try. Good, she said, standing and brushing off her skirt. Because now that you know the truth, this whole mess can finally be over. And for the first time in days, Oliver felt the weight lift, replaced by nothing but embarrassment, relief, and the warmth of his wife's steady presence. Chapter 7, Rebuilding Trust. The drive home felt strangely quiet. Not the tense, heavy kind of quiet, but the soft, thoughtful kind, like both of them were sifting through everything that had just happened. Clara drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the center console. Every now and then, her pinky brushed Oliver's, a small reassurance that she was there, that they were okay. But Oliver sat rigid, staring out the window, replaying every insane decision he had made over the past 48 hours. The fake badge, the burner accounts, the Uber philosopher, the plant cam footage, the office infiltration. He groaned softly into his palms. Clara glanced at him. "You good?" "No," he muttered. "I'm mortified and hungry and mortified." Clara's lips twitched. "Well, at least you're consistent." He let out a small exhale that almost became a laugh. When they reached home, Clara unlocked the door, stepped inside, and tossed her bag onto the couch. Oliver hovered by the entrance, unsure if he should approach her, give her space, or curl up in a carpet burrito and hope for reincarnation. Clara looked back at him, brow raised. "Why are you standing like a lost tourist? Come in." He stepped inside. She took his hand gently. "Sit." They sat side by side on the couch. The same couch where they had eaten pizza, watched movies, argued about laundry, made up, laughed, dreamed. Now it felt like neutral territory. A safe zone. Oliver inhaled shakily. I need to say something." Clara nodded. "I'm listening." He took a long breath, gathering courage. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For the spying and the doubting. For the very creative insanity." Clara bit her lip, trying so hard not to smile at the phrase creative insanity. "I should have trusted you," he continued. "I should have talked to you instead of creating an entire investigation task force in my head." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. "The truth is, I got scared. I know it sounds ridiculous, but when I saw Julian with you, so confident and polished, and always beside you, I panicked." Clara's expression softened. "I felt like you were slipping away," Oliver whispered. "Like you were living a life that didn't have space for me anymore. And instead of facing that fear, I projected a movie-level conspiracy onto it." Clara rested her hand on his back, rubbing small circles. "Oliver, look at me." He lifted his head. She slid closer until their knees touched. "You're not losing me." And you weren't. Not even for a second. But she hesitated. He braced himself. "I also messed up," she admitted quietly. "I've been working so much. Too much. I didn't even realize how distant I'd become." He blinked. "Clara, no, let me say it." She held his gaze firmly. "I've been coming home late, checking emails in bed, missing our dinners. I didn't even notice that we stopped doing all the small things we used to do together." He swallowed. "I didn't realize," she said, "that you were standing outside looking in, while I kept walking forward." The confession hit him straight in the chest. "I'm sorry too," she murmured. They sat in silence, their foreheads leaning together, breaths mingling. For a while, that was enough. Eventually Clara pulled back gently and clapped her hands once. "All right, we're not ending the night like emotionally exhausted zombies. We need comfort food." Oliver blinked. "Pastries?" Clara snorted. "Soup. My mom's marathon recipe." He groaned dramatically. "The 3-hour soup?" "Exactly. But it takes forever and uses 17 ingredients." 18, she corrected with a grin. "You always forget the bay leaf." He let out a small laugh. "Okay, soup therapy it is." They moved into the kitchen, the warm overhead lights flicking on as Clara tied her hair up and pulled out the biggest pot they owned. Oliver washed the vegetables. Clara chopped them with the precision of a seasoned chef. Oliver peeled potatoes slowly, dramatically, as if they were made of glass. Clara teased him for peeling them like he was performing delicate surgery. He stuck his tongue out at her. She flicked a carrot slice at him in retaliation. The tension melted away. They worked side by side, cutting, stirring, tasting, adjusting. It felt natural, like slipping back into an old rhythm they hadn't realized they'd lost. At one point Oliver asked, "Should I add the bay leaf now?" Clara eyed him suspiciously. "Did you wash it?" "Who washes bay leaves?" "People who don't want leaf dust in their soup." He stared at the leaf. "It has dust." She burst into laughter. "No, I just wanted to see if you'd wash it." He gave her a look of deep betrayal. "You're a menace." "Correct." As the soup simmered, filling the house with a warm, nostalgic smell, they moved around the kitchen like a dance they'd forgotten they knew, brushing past each other, bumping hips, exchanging soft smiles. Eventually they settled onto the small kitchen island stools, each holding a steaming bowl. Oliver took a spoonful, burning his tongue immediately. Ow! Clara patted his hand. Some things never change. He smiled into his bowl. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, until Clara cleared her throat. So your spy phase. Oliver groaned. Please. No. We have to talk about it. No, we don't. Oh, we do, she insisted, grinning. Because you, my sweet, adorable disaster husband, created multiple burner accounts. What were the usernames? Oliver closed his eyes in agony. I don't want to say. Clara leaned forward eagerly. Tell me. No, tell me. No, she poked his arm. Tell me. He sighed deeply, defeated. Fine. One of them was Truth Seeker 88. Clara nearly fell off her stool laughing. Oliver. And another one was, he rubbed his forehead. Corporate Shadow Fox. She wheezed. Stop. I can't breathe. He grumbled, but her laughter melted something painful inside him. It felt good seeing her smile at him again, not with confusion or fear, but love. Pure, stupid, warm love. When she finally recovered, she scooted closer and rested her head on his shoulder. Oliver, she said softly, I'm glad we can laugh about it now. He rested his cheek on her hair. Me too. We'll do better, she whispered. Both of us. He nodded. Together. And in the quiet glow of their kitchen, with soup simmering on the stove and Clara tucked against his side, Oliver felt something he hadn't felt in days. Safe. Loved. Home. The chaos was over. The trust was rebuilding. And somewhere between laughter and soup bowls, they found each other again. Chapters 8. Growth and Redemption. The weeks that followed felt different for Oliver. Not dramatically, not explosively, but in a quiet, steady, grounding way. Like the difference between a storm and the soft rain that comes afterward, washing everything clean. Clara noticed it first. He woke up earlier. He smiled more. He wasn't checking shadows, phone screens, or imaginary evidence boards for clues that didn't exist. And most importantly, he was finally doing something he hadn't done in a long time. He was taking care of himself. It began with a conversation, one of their late-night, blanket-wrapped ones where they lay in bed with the lights off and spoke softly into the darkness. Oliver, Clara whispered one night, you're too smart, too warm, to you to spend your days doubting yourself. He placed his hand over hers. I know, or I'm trying to know. And he was. For the first time, Oliver began to really examine what lay beneath the panic and jealousy, old insecurities, quiet fears, that voice that sometimes told him he wasn't enough. Instead of avoiding them, he decided, I'm going to work on this. For her. For us. For me. The Children's Hospital. A week later, Clara mentioned something casually over breakfast. Brightline Media was funding a new pediatric wing at Elmwood Children's Hospital. She was attending a board meeting there that afternoon. Oliver paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. A pediatric wing? For real. Clara looked up from her coffee. Yeah, it's a big project. We've been working on it for months. He set a spoon down. Do they need volunteers? Clara blinked. Yes? I mean, hospitals always need extra hands. What? He shrugged, trying to look nonchalant, even though his heart fluttered with a strange mix of nerves and excitement. I don't know. I just feel like doing something useful. Something that helps. Something real. Clara's smile grew slowly, warmly. I think that's a wonderful idea. So he did. The first day he walked into the hospital, he felt like an imposter again. Not a spy this time, but someone trying on a new version of himself and hoping it wouldn't collapse around him. The volunteer coordinator, Ms. Hall, was a brisk but kind woman in her 50s, wearing a navy cardigan and a badge covered in cartoon stickers. You Oliver Wilder? She asked, flipping through her clipboard. Yes, ma'am. You married to Clara Wilder? The CEO with the intimidating eyebrows. Oliver laughed. Those eyebrows have won wars. Ms. Hall clapped him on the shoulder. Good. Humor is required here. She gave him a tour. Bright hallways painted with murals, rooms decorated with superhero posters, nurses who worked like gentle tornadoes, and tiny children who smiled with a resilience that made Oliver's chest ache. He found himself drawn to the art corner. A long table filled with crayons, paints, glitter, and construction paper. This is where they go to escape, Ms. Hall said. Help them create something. It distracts them from pain, from fear. Oliver nodded, feeling something stir inside him. And so, every Tuesday and Friday, he returned, becoming himself again and better. He helped kids draw dragons, paint galaxies, glue foam stars, build crooked little cardboard houses. He read stories, did silly voices, performed dramatic reenactments of picture books. He learned their names. He learned their favorite colors. He learned which ones needed quiet support and which needed energetic distraction. One day, a little girl named Mia asked, "Why does your hair look like a tornado?" He blinked. "It just grows like this." She squinted. "Did you anger a wizard?" "I might have," he admitted seriously. "There was a muffin incident a few years back." She nodded solemnly, accepting this without question. Clara visited the hospital once, briefly, for a meeting. She spotted Oliver seated at the art table wearing a paper crown made by the kids, while two toddlers stuck glitter stars onto his sleeve. He was laughing, a free, unguarded laugh she hadn't heard in weeks. Her heart melted. Later, in the car, she touched his cheek affectionately. "Oliver, you fit here." "No," he said softly. "I feel like I'm fitting into myself again." Clara squeezed his hand, understanding her world. The more time Oliver spent volunteering, the more he understood something crucial. Clara's world was heavy, not in a dark, miserable way, but in a responsibility-heavy way. Her job wasn't just meetings and spreadsheets and presentations. It was making decisions that affected hundreds. It was signing off on budgets that could help hospitals like this one expand. It was working late because one overlooked detail could impact dozens of employees. For the first time, Oliver didn't just see her workload. He felt its weight, and he realized something even more important. She didn't need him to be perfect. She needed him to be steady, present, supportive, confident in himself. Not someone who spiraled silently, but someone who talked to her, someone who trusted her. Conversations instead of silence. Their communication began to shift. When Oliver felt insecure, he told her. When Clara felt overwhelmed, she shared it rather than letting it spill over silently. When either of them felt stretched thin, they said so, without guilt, without defensiveness. One evening, as they were getting ready for bed, Clara walked out of the bathroom, towel in hand, and said, "You know, we're different lately." He looked up from a book he was pretending to read. "Different how?" "In a good way," she said, sitting at the foot of the bed. "You feel more grounded, more sure." He let his breath out slowly. "I'm trying." She leaned in, brushing her fingers through his hair. "And I see it. Every day." He smiled, small and warm, finding confidence. The more he grew, the more Oliver discovered pieces of himself that had been buried under years of quiet self-doubt. He didn't shrink as often. He didn't overthink every gesture, every silence. He didn't let fear invent stories in the empty spaces. Instead, when a worry sparked, he extinguished it with honesty. One afternoon, while walking home with Clara, he said, "Hey, can I tell you something?" "Always," she replied. "I'm proud of myself," he admitted, cheeks warming. For volunteering. For not shutting down. For talking about things instead of spiraling. Clara slid her arm around his waist. "I'm proud of you too. More than you know." He kissed the top of her head lightly. A simple gesture, but one that felt like redemption. Over the next few weeks, Oliver didn't just repair what had broken. He rebuilt himself into someone stronger. Someone present. Someone secure. Someone who could love without trembling at the thought of loss. He finally understood. Clara didn't need a flawless partner. She needed a whole one. And Oliver was finally becoming whole again. Chapters 9. The security guard returns. The ribbon-cutting ceremony at Elmwood Children's Hospital was buzzing with quiet excitement. Parents, children, nurses, and board members filled the lobby, the scent of fresh paint and flowers mixing with the faint tang of antiseptic. Brightline Media's logo gleamed proudly on the wall, announcing the wing's arrival. Streamers and balloons added a cheerful, almost surreal air, as though the entire hospital had been transformed into a place of celebration. Oliver stood beside Clara, holding her hand loosely while she gave a few last instructions to the staff. He had volunteered at the hospital for weeks, But today felt different. Today wasn't just about crayons, cardboard dragons, or painting stars on tiny hands. It was about seeing Clara in her element and being fully present beside her. He glanced at her as she laughed at a nurse's joke, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners and her shoulders relaxed, and he felt a warm pride bloom in his chest. Then something caught his eye near the entrance. "Wait," he murmured. Clara followed his gaze. Standing there, looking nervous and slightly out of place among the parents and hospital staff, was the security guard. The very same man who had, weeks ago, stared at him with amusement while pointing toward Julian, setting off the cascade of paranoia, confusion, and chaos that had almost ruined everything. Oliver's stomach flipped. He felt a tiny flare of old resentment, not toward Clara, of course, but toward that single moment of misunderstanding that had sent him down a rabbit hole. The guard, spotting Oliver and Clara, walked hesitantly toward them. His hands were clasped in front of him like a man approaching a king to apologize for a courtly blunder. "Mr. Wilder, Mrs. Wilder," he began, his voice low and uncertain. I just want to say, I'm really sorry." Oliver blinked, trying not to grin. "Sorry? For what?" he asked, though his voice was gentle, almost indulgent. The man swallowed, shuffling his feet. "For that day at Brightline Media. The morning when I told Mr. Wilder, when I told you, sir, that I saw your husband every day. I honestly believe Julian was your husband. I didn't mean any offense. I wasn't trying to cause trouble." Clara stepped forward, placing a calming hand on the guard's shoulder. "It's okay," she said warmly. "You had no idea. It was just a misunderstanding." The guard exhaled, shoulders slumping slightly as relief washed over him. "I know. I felt awful when I realized what happened. I never meant for it to cause any problems for either of you." Oliver studied him for a moment, then offered a small, forgiving smile. "It's fine. Really. That morning, it's actually kind of funny now, looking back." The guard's eyes widened slightly. "Funny," he echoed, unsure if he had heard correctly. Clara laughed softly. "Yes, funny. You were just doing your job, and, well, it spiraled into something completely ridiculous." Oliver nodded, his voice low but steady. "Exactly. Honestly, it's a miracle we survived it." The guard's lips quivered into a tentative smile. "I'm glad. I was worried you might still be upset. I didn't want to seem careless." "Nope," Oliver said, shaking his head. "No resentment here. That day it taught me a lot, actually, about myself, about overthinking, about trusting Clara." Clara leaned into Oliver's side, resting her head on his shoulder. "And about the dangers of assuming things without all the facts," she added, smirking. The security guard chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, lesson learned. I'll stick to checking badges and leave the marital assumptions to everyone else." Oliver's lips twitched into a full grin now. "Good plan. Very good plan." Clara gave Oliver's hand a squeeze and whispered, "See, sometimes the smallest moments, even the ones that feel like disasters, can end up being strangely meaningful." Oliver nodded, feeling a weight lift off his chest. He realized he no longer carried the simmering anger or embarrassment that had once lingered from that chaotic morning. The memory no longer stung. Instead, it had been transformed into a shared joke, a reminder of how far they had come together. He turned slightly to Clara, smiling down at her. "Remember how panicked I was? Following Julian, filming him, riding in that Uber, that ridiculous Dimitri guy." Clara laughed so hard that nearby children glanced up in curiosity. "Yes, the Uber philosopher. You look like a cartoon character sneaking around in full panic mode." Oliver laughed too, the sound rich and full, not ashamed, not embarrassed, just genuine. "And the files. Oh my God, the files in your office. I think I scared the living daylights out of you." "You did," Clara admitted, shaking her head. "And yet, here we are, laughing about it. Somehow, it all seems less important now. Just ridiculous, really." Oliver breathed in deeply, feeling a sense of closure. The tension, the panic, the jealousy, it had all dissolved. The person who had once clung to anger at that morning had vanished. Now there was only lightness, relief, and the quiet joy of shared understanding. Even the guard seemed lighter, his posture less tense as he watched the two of them. Oliver offered him a small nod, silently conveying that there were no hard feelings. "I'm really glad I ran into you today," Oliver said sincerely. "It's kind of poetic in a way, like closing the loop on one of the strangest days of my life." Clara leaned into him again, softly chuckling. "And it all started with a badge and a misunderstanding. Who would have thought?" The guard laughed quietly, nodding in agreement. "Honestly, I'm just glad I didn't cause any permanent damage." "No permanent damage," Oliver repeated, smiling. "Though I might still have some stories to share for the rest of my life." Clara rested her hand on his arm, feeling the warmth of his touch, the ease in his posture. She caught his eye and whispered, "And I'll be right there laughing at every single one." Oliver felt a final, complete release. He let go of the small, lingering resentment he had once carried toward that chaotic morning. The embarrassment no longer held power over him. He didn't need to relive it in anger or shame. Instead, he and Clara shared a quiet, soft laugh together, leaning into each other as the ribbon-cutting ceremony began, balloons swaying gently overhead. The hospital staff cheered, and the children clapped, but for Oliver and Clara, the moment was intimate, private, and full of love. A memory that had once felt like a dagger. The security guard, the misidentified husband, the panic had now become a gentle, humorous reminder. Oliver whispered to Clara, just loud enough for her to hear. Who knew a single security guard could start all of this? Clara giggled, resting her head on his shoulder again. "Some things are too ridiculous to ever stay serious, Oliver. And I'm glad they don't." And in that moment, Oliver finally understood the full weight of relief, of letting go, of moving forward. The tension, the mistrust, and the chaotic spiral of fear were gone. He breathed in, looked at Clara, and felt a profound sense of peace. The security guard had come, apologized, and left, and Oliver had laughed. Truly laughed, letting go of the resentment he had once clutched tightly. The past was no longer a trap. It was a lesson. And together, Oliver and Clara moved forward, hand in hand, sharing a quiet smile at the absurdity and joy of life. Chapters 10, Stronger Than Before. Oliver and Clara sat on the balcony of their apartment, the city lights twinkling below like a constellation of miniature suns. The soft hum of traffic, the distant laughter of late-night diners, and the faint smell of jasmine from the potted plants on the railing created a calm, intimate atmosphere, a far cry from the chaos that had engulfed them just weeks ago. Clara rested her head on Oliver's shoulder, tracing circles with her finger over his hand. "You know," she began, voice teasing, "I think Julian is your biggest competition." Oliver blinked at her, raising an eyebrow. "My biggest competition?" She smirked. "He's polished, confident, handsome, and seems to know exactly how to open a car door without spilling coffee." Oliver let out a dramatic groan, flopping back in his chair. "Oh, fantastic. So I'm competing with a gay COO who has a husband and a better fashion sense than me." Clara laughed, a soft, melodic sound that made his chest tighten with warmth. "Yes, and you're still winning." He laughed too, shaking his head. "By virtue of being me?" "Exactly," she said, squeezing his hand. "You're genuine, loyal, and wonderfully dorky. Those are qualities Julian will never have, no matter how fabulous his wardrobe is." Oliver smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and amusement. The thought of Julian, the same man who had inadvertently triggered his spiral of paranoia, now existed in his mind only as a friendly rival, a playful notion that brought more laughter than anxiety. "Speaking of Julian," Clara continued, standing and gesturing toward the apartment door, "we need to set a date for dinner with him and Damien." Oliver groaned again. "Dinner? I can barely make it through cooking soup without flubbing the bay leaf." Clara laughed. "Oh, come on. They're not judging you, Oliver. And besides, I think you'll get along with Damien. He has that calm, easygoing vibe, the kind that complements chaos like yours." Oliver chuckled, imagining Damien calmly sipping tea while he spilled pasta sauce onto the counter. I hope he can handle me. Clara leaned down, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. He'll love you, and so will Julian. Trust me. Planning the dinner. Over the next few days, they exchanged texts with Julian and Damien, settling on a cozy Friday night dinner at a small Italian bistro known for its intimate atmosphere and excellent lasagna. Oliver found himself oddly excited. Not anxious, not fearful, but genuinely looking forward to spending time with people who, just weeks ago, had been at the center of his insecurities. On the evening of the dinner, he straightened his tie nervously, a habit Clara found endlessly endearing. "Do I look okay?" he asked, adjusting the knot for the third time. Clara grinned. "You look perfect, Oliver. Relax." He nodded, though his stomach fluttered like a hummingbird trapped in a teacup. When they arrived at the restaurant, Julian and Damien were already waiting, standing, and waving. Julian's smile was warm, easy, and teasing. "Ah, the dashing Mr. Wilder. Clara has told us so much about you." Oliver blushed slightly. "All eyes, I assure you." Damien laughed, a low, melodic sound. "We'll be the judge of that." The four of them settled into the booth, menus in hand, though conversation flowed far more easily than any of them anticipated. Oliver found himself relaxing, laughing at Julian's sarcastic quips and Damien's gentle humor. Clara reached across the table, squeezing his hand, a silent affirmation that he was exactly where he belonged. Reflections on growth. After dinner, while walking home under a canopy of streetlights, Oliver felt a quiet sense of contentment wash over him. He reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The security guard's misunderstanding, the panic, the wild suspicion of Julian, the absurd spying, and the weeks of personal growth that followed. He had started as a man consumed by insecurity, allowing fear and imagination to twist reality. But now he was different. He listened more than he jumped to conclusions. He communicated instead of hiding in silent panic. He trusted Clara and, more importantly, himself. Clara had noticed his reflective silence and nudged him playfully. "Thinking about something profound, or just missing your spy adventures?" Oliver laughed. "Honestly, a little of both. But mostly, how far we've come, how much I've grown, and how lucky I am that you didn't give up on me." Clara's smile softened, her thumb tracing the back of his hand. "We've grown together, and that's what matters. Misunderstandings don't break us, we break through them." Oliver nodded, feeling the weight of his past fears lift completely. "I get it now. It's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about how we handle them, and how we choose to trust each other afterward." Playful teasing and warmth. Back at home, Oliver flopped onto the couch, exhausted from the evening, yet happier than he had been in weeks. Clara joined him, draping an arm around his shoulders. "You know," she said with a teasing glint in her eye, "I think Julian is secretly plotting to steal my husband." Oliver raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Oh, really? And what makes you say that?" Clara leaned closer, resting her head on his chest. "He smiles too much, too charming, and he knows the exact way to carry my bag without spilling anything." Oliver laughed, letting out a dramatic sigh. "Well, I suppose I better keep an eye on my rival husband. Can't have him stealing my crown." Clara giggled, kissing the top of his head. "You'll always be my crown, Oliver." Hands down. Oliver felt a warmth that was part pride, part relief, and part deep, enduring love. He realized that every moment of doubt, every absurd panic, every misstep had led to this. A marriage strengthened, a trust renewed, and a bond deepened by shared chaos and the willingness to grow together. He pulled Clara closer, wrapping his arms securely around her. "I promise, no more wild spy schemes. Just honesty. Always." Clara smiled into his shoulder. "I promise the same. Honesty, laughter, and maybe a little gentle teasing." He laughed, resting his head against hers. "Deal." Outside, the city continued its hum. Lights flickered, cars rolled by, and somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of music played. Inside, their apartment was filled with quiet warmth, laughter, and the comfort of love that had weathered the storm. Oliver thought back to that chaotic morning with the security guard, to Julian holding Clara's briefcase, to the spiraling paranoia that had once consumed him. He realized that without that spectacular misunderstanding, they might not have grown as much. They might not have laughed so freely, communicated so openly, or learned the full depth of their commitment. Instead, the misunderstanding had almost broken them, and yet it had done the opposite. It had made them stronger than before. He looked down at Clara, her eyes half closed in contentment, a soft smile on her lips, and whispered, "We survived everything, and I've never felt closer to you." Clara stirred slightly, squeezing his hand. Stronger. Together. Always. Oliver smiled, letting the moment stretch, imprinting it in his memory. Laughter, teasing, love, honesty, all woven together from a chaotic beginning into a foundation that could withstand anything. And in the soft glow of the living room, with the night city lights sparkling beyond their windows, they sat together, quietly, fully, and completely, stronger, wiser, and happier than they had ever been. The chaos of one morning, one misunderstanding, one accidental rivalry with a COO had given way to love, trust, and a bond that would never falter again. Your chapter ends exactly at the final bullet, a warm, playful, love-filled ending that emphasizes honesty and the strength of their renewed bond. The story is now fully expanded across all 10 chapters. If you want, I can compile all chapters into a single polished 10,000+ word manuscript, keeping the narrative flow seamless for publishing or reading.